everyone. So today we are going to recover and refinish these vintage chairs that I found. And we're gonna make them match the ones that I already did a couple months ago. So they're these beautiful teak mid-century modern chairs. I recovered them in like a faux Sherpa. So we're gonna be doing the same thing to the other chairs. But yeah, so this is a skill that I actually picked up from my grandparents. My Nana has recovered quite a bit of pieces of furniture. These are really, really simple to do. So this is a good beginner project if you've never recovered a chair before. Really all you need is the tools. I feel like getting those is like the hardest part, making sure you have everything that you need, and then taking out all the staples from the way that they've already been done. That's the longest part. Otherwise, it's honestly like wrapping a Christmas present, but with a staple gun. So it's really, really simple. A lot less crazy than it sounds. I always felt like it was something that was super intimidating, the idea of like recovering a piece of furniture, but it's really, really simple. So I think that anyone can do it, really. So we're gonna get started. We're gonna take the chairs apart. These ones are very easy to take apart. I'm lucky. All we need is an Allen key. So I'll have you guys watch me take these bad boys apart. I'm not gonna make you watch me take the staples out. It's pretty self-explanatory. Grab some pliers or like a screwdriver, something flat, and you just wedge under. Just to give you an idea of what I mean, you can see all along here on the edges, those are staples all along there. So you're gonna have to remove all of those. And then once we're done that, then we can actually start cutting our fabric out, and that's like when the fun part happens. But I did these four already, and I love the way that they look. I love how unique they are. I really think we lucked out in finding this faux Sherpa that looks just as good as real sheepskin, so I'm really happy with it. The only thing with these ones, I might be also refinishing the wood because they are a bit lighter than the other ones I have, but I'm undecided if we're gonna do that or not, so we'll see. All right, so let's get started. Alright, hey you guys, I'm back. So it's been probably 2 months since I've been working on these, and what you've seen thus far is pretty much all the progress I've made. So I got super busy and just didn't have time to work on them, so we're back. We're in the garage. This is going to be our little workstation from now on. So where we left off, I completely took one of the backrest fabrics off. So here, to make sure that we have like the proper pattern piece to work off of. And I'm gonna finish doing it on this seat cushion as well. And then what I'll end up doing is just cutting all of these ones off. Just because the most time consuming part is removing the staples. So if I were to do that on all of these, I would really just be wasting so much time. So we are gonna get started on that. I'm going to just throw some music on, get in a groove, and I'll be back once everything is taken apart. Okay, so I brought you guys a little bit closer just so you can see the detail of what we're working with. Hopefully this angle isn't too annoying for everyone, but I went ahead and cleaned the table. It's still a little damp. We're gonna kind of let that dry a little bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and grab my fabric and lay it out flat on my working surface. So this is my fabric I'm using. It's a faux shearling, and this is obviously the right side. So this is gonna be the wrong side that we're gonna be working with. I have a Sharpie, so that's what I'm gonna be using, and we are just going to unfold this. And we're gonna get started. So I'm gonna cut the larger pattern pieces first. So what we're gonna do is just lay them out. The good thing about covering furniture is that you don't have to be super precise. I know that sounds bad, but honestly, it's like you're wrapping a present, but with a staple gun. So it's not like traditional pattern making where you have to be very, very careful. As you can see here, it's basically just a big rectangle, and there are little notches that were cut. So rather than even cutting out these notches, we are just going to kind of mark where they are, but otherwise we're just going to trace around the square, and that'll pretty much be it. So we're gonna get started. Make sure you're not cutting too close to the selvage. That's the raw edge of the fabric, and you can see there'll often be, there's like some little prick holes here. So this would have been like where the end of the bolt was. We don't want to use this because this end of the fabric generally loses some of its elasticity, and it gets a little like saggy, not as tight as it should be. So we're just going to steer clear from that. And that's why it's always good to make sure you have more than enough fabric than you think you need. So I'm just going to go ahead and like literally just trace around a rectangle, not being like overly precise because we're just gonna kind of cut it up anyways. But I am gonna mark where the pegs are supposed to be. And then we're just gonna keep doing that. So I'm gonna put them side by side, and then I'm gonna move the fabric up and do the other two seats. And then I'll start with the back, but that's pretty much what you're doing. And then we'll get all started with the cutting. Next day, and we get to start stapling now, which is arguably the most fun part. I'm wearing these gloves because there are so many loose fibers with like this fluffy material I'm working with, and I just kept getting fibers kind of like stuck in my skin. So we are going to get started. I've done 3 of the backrests and 3 of the seats, so I only have 1 left. So I'll have you watch me when I do those. So this is what they look like when they're done. Looking pretty good. And the seats look like this. And the back's a little, not the greatest, but I'm not selling them, they're for me, so it's good enough. Okay, so I'm gonna bring you a little bit closer so you can see exactly what's happening, but it essentially is just like wrapping a Christmas present, but with a staple gun. So easy peasy. The hardest part sometimes, especially working with the curved backs, for example, you can get some bubbling. Some of them, I do have a bit of bubbling in there, and it's just not working for me for some reason. The other set of chairs I didn't have any issues at all. These ones are giving me a bit of a harder time, even though they're the same chair. Not quite sure why, but we're gonna get to it, and you can watch me in action. Okay, so we're gonna start with the seat portion, just because it's a little bit easier and quicker, less annoying. So, just gonna wipe off my station here. So, I'm gonna lay this flat on the table. If you can remember, I marked my little X's right here on all the areas where there's the little notches that I'm gonna have to cut out. So what I'm gonna do is place my piece right here, and I'm going to line up the little dowels that you can see kind of sticking out like here. I'm gonna line them up with the little X's, and then I'm just gonna cut a little triangle to where those are, because we are gonna kind of wrap this portion around the little dowels and staple it. Let me zoom in on one of these just so you can see what it is that we're doing exactly. So, cut here, cut here, and then as you can see, we'll be able to like wrap it around the dowel that's sticking out. So we're gonna do that for all of these. And you'll notice like here, for example, the X wasn't marked as close as it should have been. So when you push it up, you'll see it doesn't like quite line up, and that's totally fine. That just means I'm gonna cut a bit further. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side. Okay. So, as you can see here, I've got my fabric on the right side facing down because we're going to be wrapping it around. I've got my seat cushion here. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of make it so the fabric is tight around the edges. Not too tight because then you'll get like some pulling showing, but tight enough that it lays smooth. So I'm just going to pull it up. Grab my handy staple gun, and we're just gonna put one staple in, one staple on the other side, one staple here and here. And this one has a bit of excess cushion, I find, so I like to push that down and then just pull this up. Depending on the fabric you're using, you are gonna have to be very careful. My fabric, because it's fuzzy, leaves like a lot of room for mistakes, which is so amazing. But if you're using a different kind of fabric, you'd have to be very careful just to make sure that you're pulling evenly everywhere. So, this. Okay. So we've got the fabric secured on all the ends here. We're going to flip it over just to make sure that it is actually laying like flat like this. As you can see, it's nice and smooth. There's no gaping. If we had pulled aside a little too, either too loose, it might kind of look like this, or too tight, and you'd also see some ripples. So this is looking really good. We're just going to keep going. Flip it over, and now what I like to do is do the corners kind of right away. So just take these, as you can see here, take these edges and just put them, lay them flat against the corner. Now that's gonna leave you with like some bubbling and puckering here and a ton of excess fabric, but that's fine. We're just gonna keep pulling as tight as we can and stapling in place. Just gonna keep doing that. And I also want to make sure too that I'm tightening the fabric and stapling right around where those notches are. So like this, just pull it nice and tight. Throw a staple right up here. And then the same thing on the other side. We're gonna keep tightening and stapling. Okay, so this is looking pretty good for a corner. As you can see, like this is what it looked like before. And this is what it's gonna look like now. When you flip it over, it'll look just nice and rounded like that. Perfect little corner. So we're gonna keep on doing that, and then I'll show you what we're gonna do with all this excess fabric. Be forewarned, it is definitely not what like a professional would do. It's just what I'm gonna do because it's good enough for the chairs that I have in my home. if I were selling these, I'd probably put like some binding or something and then staple on top of that, just so it looked really good and professional, kind of like how these were done before. As you can see, like before, you can see that there was like that binding underneath and it looked very like clean. We are just going to be stapling and calling her a day. So I'll keep doing this and you can time lapse and watch the process. Okay, so it looks like we're pretty much done here. Again, not perfect underneath. Wish I could say that I had the patience to do that. I don't. I just want the chairs to look good. So when you look at them this way, they look perfectly fine. So there we go. There we have the seat, and we are gonna do the backrest now. Okay, so the backrests are curved, so they're gonna be a little trickier to do and require a little bit more patience and just like being a little more finicky. So I have my line marked here where in the old fabric they had flipped it over, so they can staple and just staple on top without having the raw edge. We're gonna cut this down a little bit just because our fabric is so bulky that like we wouldn't be able to put the chairs back together if we had that much excess bulk of fabric, and it would just look really bad. So this is, again, a little situational depending on what kind of fabric that you're using. But for what I'm doing, this is going to be necessary to like cut some of it down. So first thing here, this at the bottom, there's a little groove. It's a little hard to see, but there's a little groove where all the old staples were put, and this is where we're going to be stapling into. That way when it sits up like this, everything's kind of hidden in this little seam underneath and you don't see it as easily. Hi!
Making a video?
Yeah, I am.
Nice.
Thanks. And just making my chairs.
How do you do that? You're so good at that.
Ah, thank you.
Video's good.
Thank you. Hi, buddy. Okay, so I placed my first staple a little too close to the raw edge of the fabric because it's curved. We're not going to be placing the fabric the same place everywhere. So I'm just going to cut that out. I think also the issue is I might have cut this on the right side. Yeah, that's the problem. I think in my previous experiment with these, I cut it in this direction, and you can see one side of the fabric does have a bit more give. You never want to cut this way on the bias when covering furniture, but this side has a bit more give versus this here is a lot stiffer, so it's having a hard time contouring around the pillow. So I have honestly had a lot of issues with these, but I will show you the old ones that I did to show you that they do work out. Okay, so I've gone ahead and smoothed out all those edges and on the ends here. So my particular chairs, they sit flat against two wooden pieces. So these edges don't have to be perfect. I do, however, need to kind of trim back the fur a little bit just so they can actually fit like with the chairs. Just give it a nice little haircut here. And this won't matter so much because, again, you won't see them. And I covered these the same way I covered the base. I stopped filming for a second, honestly, because I was getting super frustrated, but just a lot of like finicking around with it and the bubbles all disappeared. So it's totally good. Okay, so I'm ready to show you the chairs. Let's take this off the tripod and kind of do a little reveal. So our dining table. And here they are. Such a transformation from that ugly green, like vintage fabric that they were rocking before. I love how it looks. I love that it's faux fur. I love that it's creamy and it works so well with the wood of the table. And they just turned out so perfectly. And our dining set is complete. All we're waiting for now, we've got some pendants, 2 pendants above the dining table that I'm gonna be selecting. But otherwise, this space is pretty much done. Love it. All right, so that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. As you can see, it's not the most complicated process recovering chairs. If there were buttons or seams I had to sew, it might be a little more complicated, but this is a really good beginner project and it's something that you could definitely do at home. All you need is a staple gun, some fabric, and a lot of time and patience. I think that's definitely the hardest part, is being patient and just enjoying the process. But now that they're done, I'm so happy that I don't have to do them again. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of DIYs coming up, a lot of fun DIYs, as well as a home tour. We're gonna be revealing the main floor once it's all ready to go, so that shouldn't be too long. And so subscribe so you don't miss that.
Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to notify. Do it.
What he said.